We left. We were there from September. The grounds right here where you are was liberated by the 1st Division in September 11th of all days, 1944. And then we were in this area from September until January. The Battle of the Bulge took place in December 16th of 1944 to January 1945. It was the largest land battle the Army ever fought. We had a temporary cemetery over there called Henri Chappell, and before we left to go to Germany, there were 17,000 buried there. Now you have 8,000 here, just under 8,000. I think it's 7,991, if I'm not mistaken. Or 92. And but what happened is, 4 years after the war, this and other military cemeteries were built by engineering and architectural firms. Underground here are steel and concrete girders. These crosses and stars of David are affixed to. I get a little emotional when I come out here because I helped bury a lot of these guys. 18, 19, 20. There are some women buried here, some nurses. How many? Three nurses. So, as I said, this was constructed 4 years after the war, so what happened is all those soldiers over there, and I call them heroes because they were heroes. They were buried over there. They had probably been buried in 1 or 2 other temporary cemeteries. Our company, 125 men, 125 officers and enlisted men, we initiated 17 cemeteries throughout France, Belgium, and Germany. In fact, we had to disinter the cemetery in Germany because all those bodies had to be moved out of there immediately after the war, right after Memorial Day. And they were put in boxes and taken back to France and Belgium and reburied again in a temporary cemetery. Finally, 4 years after the war, the remains got put in caskets, lined caskets. That's what you have here. Of course, what you have here is remains, because it was at least 4 years later, 4 or 5 years later, since they were initially buried. So as I said, I personally handled a lot of these bodies. I was young. When we got here, I was 19. I was 18 and landed in Normandy. And I was weighed about 115 pounds. Any of you weigh 115 pounds?
Had a good day.
Even my wife weighs more than that. Hi, Eddie. That's my wife. I didn't speak about the war. My late wife, that I was married to for 13 years, and we knew each other for 21 years. Michael is from that marriage. His sister is a year older than him. And it wasn't until 10 years after she died when I met Dottie, because we actually took care of ourselves. My son, my daughter, and me. 3 of us took care of ourselves. Until Sandy got to college, and then Michael got to college a year later, and then I met Dottie. So Dottie, the reason I'm telling you that is because Dottie and my 2 kids talked me into coming back 50 years later to Normandy. And walking through that cemetery, I was surprised to see that there was no date of birth on the crosses and stars of David. Only date of death, which I and the guys with me, my company, know that that's approximate in so many cases. The British, the Canadians, the Germans all have date of birth, but we don't. And so when I walked through the cemetery and I noticed that, I couldn't believe it. And I said to my kids, my gosh, you know, you're 22 and 23 now. The guys buried here, so many of them 18, 19, and 20. And so that really impressed me that they didn't have the date of birth. Because when you go through here, you're going to see what I'm talking about. You have no idea how old these guys are. But I'm going to be doing a documentary later this year. I'll be back here in Belgium. to do a documentary to let you all know